One late afternoon at Morrison's grocery, an exhausted single mother stood at the checkout counter desperately counting her last few coins to buy formula for her sick baby daughter. Unfortunately, she didn't have enough to pay. Just as she was about to put the item back, a wealthy man stepped forward from behind and offered to cover the remaining amount. However, she firmly refused his help out of pride. What she didn't know was that this man wasn't just any stranger, he was someone who would change her life forever. Before we dive deeper into this story, let us know where you're watching from and don't forget to hype and subscribe for more heartwarming stories every day. Late afternoon settled over Morrison's grocery with a tired kind of light. The fluorescent bulbs inside hummed softly, washing the aisles in a pale brightness that made the oranges look too orange and the bread too white. The floor smelled faintly of bleach and coffee. A cart squeaked every few seconds somewhere beyond the cereal. People stood in lines with that after-work quiet, shoulders rounded, eyes on their phones, coupon folders flapping like small wings. Layla Johnson held her place at register 7 and kept one hand steady on the handle of the stroller. Her daughter Naomi, 2 years old, dozed lightly with flushed cheeks and a tiny wheeze that sounded like someone sighing through a straw. A knit hat covered the child's curls. The hat had a pom-pom that used to be fluffier, now it was more like a worn cotton ball. Every few breaths, Naomi's cough shook her small body, and Layla laid a palm over her chest as if she could press the illness back down. 1547, the cashier said. The young woman's name tag read Mara. She said the number the way people say a date, routine and empty. Layla opened her wallet and spread the bills with her thumb. Ones, all ones. 2 5s she had counted 3 times before leaving the apartment had turned into soft wrinkled singles at the bottom of her bag. She must have used them earlier in the week and forgotten. She licked her lower lip and counted again. $12.66. She found 2 quarters, then 1 dime, 5 pennies. She lined them up, the coins bright against the black conveyor belt. "Ma'am," Mara said, eyes already sliding toward the line growing behind. Layla offered a small apologetic smile and pushed the coins forward. "I'm just almost there." A man in a baseball cap behind her shifted his weight and sighed. Someone farther back whispered, "Always happens when you're in a hurry." The store air felt suddenly cooler against Layla's neck. She reached into the zippered pocket of her purse. Receipts. A button. Nothing else. She smoothed the front of her thrifted coat, as if she could press more money out of the lining. She pressed a finger to the screen of her phone, pretending to check something, but really she was buying time, searching her mind for a miracle that would not come. "I've got 12.66, she said, voice gentle, careful. "Could you ring up just the formula? I'll come back for the rest." She pushed 2 other items aside, a bundle of discounted bananas and a box of tissues. Mara's eyes flicked to the formula can. $15.47. Her lips pressed flat. "We can't do partial payment," she said. "It's either the full amount or..." She paused as if the rest went without saying. Layla nodded. "Right. Of course." Her throat felt dry. She slid her fingers along the rim of the stroller, grounding herself on cool plastic. She glanced at Naomi, who stirred and coughed. The sound was small and serious. "Please," she thought, "just a few dollars." She pictured the last ounces of powder at home, the way she had shaken the can and heard it rattle like sand in a jar. "It's okay," Layla said softly. I'll put it back." The words left a taste in her mouth like metal. She lifted the can off the belt. The label showed a smiling baby with full cheeks and clear eyes. The picture felt like someone else's dream. "Ma'am, we can hold it behind the counter if..." Mara began, but stopped when the man behind Layla stepped closer. "I've got it," he said, already reaching for his wallet. The man wore a navy suit that fit well, the fabric clean and quietly expensive. His tie was gray with a small pattern, the kind you don't notice unless you're up close. His hair showed threads of silver at the temples, neat as if a careful hand had placed each one. He looked about mid-40s, tall, calm. His voice was low enough that it didn't push. He didn't smile, he simply spoke like he would speak to a neighbor over a fence. "I'll cover the difference," he said. "It's no trouble." Layla's spine straightened before she even knew it, as if a string had pulled from the base of her neck. Heat rose in her cheeks. She could feel the eyes in the line prick against her back like static. She wanted to be anywhere but here. She wanted to stand on a quiet porch at dusk and breathe in warm air and be nobody's story. No, she said quickly, shaking her head. But thank you. He paused as if listening for the right next step. It's just $3, he said. His hand hovered over his wallet, not quite opening it. I'd be glad to. I said no, she repeated, more firmly, hearing too much sharpness in it, and smoothing it with a calmer tone. I appreciate it, but no, I can't accept that. Something flickered across his face, concern, not offense. He nodded. He didn't push. Instead he looked at Naomi, and what showed in his eyes then was not pity. It was recognition, like seeing a photograph you thought you'd lost and remembering every detail that came with it. Behind them, the line shuffled. A woman with a toddler on her hip muttered, "Let him help you, honey," not unkindly but like advice you don't want to taste. Layla put the can back on the belt for the cashier to void, fingers careful, the way you set down a fragile thing. "I'll come back," she said, though she didn't know when. Mara canceled the item, her nails clicking lightly on the keys. "Next," she called, already reaching for the plastic divider. The line moved forward with relief. Layla lifted the stroller handle. The wheels bumped over the metal lip at the end of the checkout with a small clack. She kept her eyes on the gray floor tiles as she turned away, because looking anyone in the face would break something inside her. As she passed the suited man, she felt him step aside to give her space. He kept his hands by his sides, not reaching. "If you change your mind," he said quietly, "I'll be right here." She didn't answer. At the automatic doors the evening wind pushed in against her knees. "Mommy," Naomi murmured, half dreaming. "Cold, I know baby," Layla whispered, pulling the knit blanket up higher under her chin. Out in the parking lot, the sky hung low and pale, the color of a spoon's back. A bite of early spring still lived in the air, even though the calendar claimed it was warmer now. She tucked her chin and pushed the stroller into the wind. At the bus stop, the bench felt like it had been made of ice. Layla stood instead, shifting from foot to keep her blood moving. A delivery truck coughed past, and the smell of diesel rolled in and faded. She checked the schedule taped to the pole, Route 12, every 20 minutes, then looked down the street where the bus would appear, 2 blocks away, turning the corner near the pharmacy. Traffic lights changed from red to green and back again with unhurried patience. She rocked the stroller gently. Naomi's cough came again, then a slow exhale that sounded like a paper bag being pressed flat. Layla touched her daughter's forehead, warm, not burning, but warm enough to worry. She swallowed and looked back at the store's doors. The glass reflected the parking lot lights and the faint outline of a man's figure in a suit, the shape indistinct until the doors opened, and he stepped out. He had no grocery bag, he had no coat. He walked toward the bus stop with a kind of careful speed, as if he wanted to arrive soon but not startle anyone by hurrying. The wind touched his tie and set it moving. Layla squared her shoulders. "Hi," he said, when he was close enough to be heard without raising his voice. He kept a respectful distance, about as far as two people stand when they are neighbors but not friends. "It's colder than I thought," he added, almost to himself. She gave a small nod, eyes on the street. The bus did not appear. "I'm sorry about inside," he said after a moment. "I should have asked first. Sometimes help works better when it comes the way a person can accept it." Layla almost smiled at that. "Almost. It's not your fault," she said, keeping her voice even. "People mean well." She paused. "Sometimes meaning well is the whole thing." He nodded. The wind touched their faces and carried the faint smell of fried chicken from the deli across the road. A car door slammed somewhere behind them. "I can give you a ride," he said, "if you'd like, no strings. I'm headed downtown but I can go wherever you need." "I can't," Layla said. "But thank you. May I ask why?" His tone was calm. He did not sound like a man used to hearing no, he sounded like a man willing to learn it. She looked at him then. Up close, she saw the faint tiredness around his eyes, the kind that belongs to grief rather than to work. He held her gaze without challenging it. "Because I don't know you," she said, gentle but firm, "because I'm with my child. Because I've learned that sometimes the cost of a favor comes due later." He nodded slowly. "That's fair." A small silence sat between them, not uncomfortable, just present. He glanced at Naomi. She doesn't feel well. No, Layla said, but she will. She smoothed the blanket again. She will. My name is Marcus, he said. Marcus Vance. He said it not like a man announcing himself to a room but like a man placing his name quietly on a table and stepping back. If the bus is late and you change your mind, I'll wait over there. He gestured to a clean black sedan parked a few spaces away, windows down, lights on. You can see me the whole time. Thank you, Layla said, for asking like that. He gave a brief nod, as if to say you're welcome and I hear you at once, and returned to his car. He sat with the door open, one foot on the ground, hands resting on the wheel, head turned toward the street where the bus would come. He did as he promised, lights on, a visible presence, not hovering. The bus finally appeared, lumbering around the corner with a breath of diesel and a squeal of brakes. The driver, a woman with a neat bun and a coffee in a metal cup, tilted the bus toward the curb. The doors folded open with that soft exhale that always sounds like a tired person giving in. Marcus stood without moving closer. Layla lifted the stroller up the small ramp, thanked the driver, and took the open spot near the front. Through the glass, as the bus pulled away, she saw the man in the suit lift his hand once in a simple, almost shy wave. She raised her hand too, an automatic polite reply, and then the bus turned and he was gone. City blocks slid by, a laundromat with fogged windows and a string of blue lights, a barber shop with two men in capes laughing at a joke on the TV, an empty lot where grass pushed up between cracked concrete like small insistences. A boy with a red backpack ran, shouting, "Hold it," and the driver did, letting him hop on breathless and grateful. Layla watched the world pass and measured the trip in ordinary pieces she trusted. At Jefferson, Mrs. Patel would be closing her small shop. At Spruce, the street light blinked for too long before deciding to turn green. At 12th, a tiny church kept its door open even when no one sat in the pews. These markers made the city feel like a place she knew, even on a day when she felt like a stranger inside her own life. She touched Naomi's cheek again, still warm. She let the tips of her fingers press into her own palm until the mild pain steadied her. She thought of the day Naomi was born, the smell of antiseptic and the nurse's calm hands, the weight of a new body that fit perfectly against her. She remembered the way the hospital room had felt too quiet after everyone left, the night sounds big and hollow until Naomi stirred and the world shrank to the circle of a mother's breath and a child's. She had promised then, pressing her lips to that soft forehead, that she would never let her child feel alone. That promise lived in her now like a second heartbeat. At Maple and 3rd, she pulled the cord. The driver gave a little nod in the mirror and braked with care. The bus let them out near the corner store with the cracked bell. Wind met them again at the curb, a simple cold that made the eyes water. She tucked the blanket tighter and walked. Her building stood half a block down, a narrow 4-story with a stoop that kept a memory of warmth from the day's sun. The hallway smelled of boiled cabbage and an old mop. Someone's radio played quietly behind a door left ajar. The elevator had been out so long that everyone stopped noticing the sign. Layla lifted the stroller one step at a time, balancing the weight with her hip. At the 3rd-floor landing, Mr. Alvarez opened his door just enough to wave. "You need help, Miss Layla." "I've got it, thank you," she answered, breath a little short but smiling. He nodded, the chain leaning across the gap like a thin line of gold, and let the door fall shut. Inside the apartment, warmth had a tired feel. The radiator clanked now and then, like a person clearing a throat. The kitchen light buzzed. A round table took up more room than it should, its wood scarred with use and clean anyway. Above the sink, a window let in the last of the day, and a slice of the opposite brick wall. Layla eased Naomi out of the stroller and onto the soft couch. She checked her forehead again, no worse, no better, and kissed her temple. "Back in a minute, Ladybug," she whispered. The child's eyelashes shivered but did not open. In the cupboard, the can of formula waited on the shelf like a test. She lifted it down and shook it. The sound was thin. She tapped the lid with her fingernail. Dust of powder rose and settled. She measured with steady hands, then added water, then added more water than the label instructed. The liquid turned milky, then a little clearer than it should be. She did not look at the number on the side of the measuring cup because it was easier to watch the swirl. She warmed the bottle in a mug of hot water instead of the microwave. The microwave sometimes heated unevenly, and tonight she wanted to control every small thing she could. While she waited, a dull drip sounded from somewhere above. She glanced up. The ceiling had a stain like a continent on a children's globe. The drip found the pail she kept beneath it with a practiced plink. A draft came through the window frame. She stuffed the folded towel tighter against the sill. Outside, someone laughed and then coughed. The laugh hung on the air a moment longer than the cough, then slipped away. The bottle felt warm against her wrist. She carried it to the couch and gathered Naomi into her lap. The child turned toward the smell, mouth opening on reflex. "There we go," Layla murmured, guiding the nipple to her lips. Naomi sucked greedily, then paused to cough, then went back to the business of being a child who believes food will always appear. Layla watched her daughter drink and counted the ounces by the settling of the liquid. She felt the guilt settle too, thin and light and still heavy somehow. "Tomorrow," she whispered, though to whom she wasn't sure. "Tomorrow I'll fix it." Naomi's breathing evened. A bubble of air rose and escaped with a small burp that made them both smile out of habit. Layla set the bottle on the table and wiped the child's mouth with the edge of the blanket. She rocked her on her lap, a rhythm older than words. Her own body remembered the pattern even when her mind felt like a box of broken things. On the table, the stack of bills waited. The electric bill, the rent reminder, the envelope from the clinic. She placed a palm over them as if to make them less loud. She would open them after she put Naomi down. She would open them when she felt strong. She would open them. A gust of wind pressed against the window and the loose pane buzzed. The overhead light flickered once, twice, and held. The pail took another drip. A siren somewhere far away slid past like a red ribbon pulled through fingers. In her mind, the grocery store replayed in small pieces. The can on the belt. The sound of coins. The cashier's hands, the man in the suit saying, "I'll cover the difference," as if it were a simple thing. The way he had stepped back when she said no, the wave he had given when the bus door closed. She did not feel anger at him. She felt something quieter, something closer to sadness that life had positioned her across from a stranger and made them practice a ritual neither of them wanted, one person offering, the other person refusing, both of them carrying away a heaviness that didn't belong to either alone. She thought of his eyes when he looked at Naomi. There had been a shadow in them, a shadow she recognized from faces in waiting rooms and quiet hallways. Grief has a way of folding into the edges of a person's gaze and staying there even when they smile. She wondered who he had lost. She wondered if the name still lived in his mouth sometimes when he woke. When Naomi's breathing became slow and deep, Layla eased her down onto the couch cushions and tucked the blanket up to her chin. She turned off the overhead light and left the small lamp on the table glowing soft as a candle. The lamp's shade wore a patch of brown where it had once leaned too close to a bulb. In that warm circle, her child's face looked gentler, the fever blush less fierce. Layla went to the sink and washed the bottle. The water ran too hot, then too cold, then right. Steam rose and fogged the edge of the window. She set the bottle upside down on a dish towel like a small white tower. She wiped the counter with wide, slow circles, though it was already clean. Sometimes the body needs a job when the mind is too full. She took off her coat and hung it on the back of a chair. She rubbed the place on her shoulder where the strap always cut. She sat at last, in the second-hand armchair by the window. The fabric was a little threadbare in the shape of someone else's life. She curled her feet under her and pulled the old Afghan over her knees. The Afghan was made of squares, mustard, teal, cream, each one a different story of hands and time. It smelled faintly of laundry soap and the past. From her purse, she took the little notebook she kept for lists and the stub of a pencil. She wrote formula on the first line. She wrote tissues on the second. She added bananas and drew a small star next to it, because Naomi loved them when her cough quieted. She paused, the pencil tip resting on the paper. On the next line she wrote pride, then stared at it, surprised to see the word there. After a moment, she erased it. The paper kept a gray ghost of the letters. She turned the page. One floor above, someone moved a chair. Pipes clanked inside the wall like an old orchestra tuning up. In the distance, a train called out to its tracks. The apartment settled around her like a coat you wear because it is the one you have. It did not fit perfectly, it kept her warm anyway. She thought of what she would say if she saw the man from the store again. Thank you did not feel like the right words. I'm okay didn't either. Maybe she would not say anything. Maybe a nod would be enough. Maybe the only language people like them shared was the brief look two strangers give each other in hard places that says I see it, I'm walking with it too. Her phone buzzed once with a text that wasn't urgent. She set it face down. She listened to her daughter breathe. She counted the breaths until she lost the number and started again, the way you sometimes do when you're trying to fall asleep. Outside, a light rain began, gentle as tapping fingers. Water found the crack in the window frame and made a silver trail down the glass. Streetlight turned the drops into small bright beads before they fell. A distant laugh rose from the sidewalk and then dissolved into the weather. Somewhere a door closed. Somewhere a kettle whistled. The world carried on in ordinary ways. Layla stood, crossed to the couch, and eased herself down beside Naomi, careful not to jostle her. She slipped her hand under the child's small back and drew her closer, the way she used to when Naomi was new and the world felt too big. The blanket covered them both. She could feel the little heart thrumming against her ribs. Tomorrow, she whispered again, not making any promises the night could break. Tomorrow we try again. The drip in the pail kept gentle time. The lamplight made a soft island in the dim room, catching on the curve of the bottle drying by the sink, the worn fabric of the Afghan, the quiet gold of a cheap picture frame on the shelf, with no picture in it yet. The window wore the rain like a veil. Layla closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed to match her daughter's. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a bus door sighed open and closed, a man lifted his hand, and a simple offer hovered in the air like a small warm thing. She did not pick it up. Not yet. She let it be, felt it rest there, and held the child she loved as the apartment listened to the rain. When the lamp finally clicked off and the room turned to soft dark, the last image left was a quiet one, a mother and her little girl asleep on a couch, the bottle standing like a sentry on the table, and a gray bucket catching the steady patience of water from a ceiling that would need fixing, someday soon. The night had its worries, yes. But it also had this, the weight of a small body curled safe against her, the warm press of a cheek, and the knowledge, thin as a thread, strong as wire, that love could hold until morning. 3 days after that gray wet evening at Morrison's grocery, the air smelled of spring again, damp earth, soft wind, and the faint sweetness of blooming magnolias. The streets outside Sunshine Community Daycare Center were alive with the sounds of children, high, tumbling laughter, the squeak of swings, and the hollow clap of a ball bouncing against the fence. Inside, the light from the tall windows slanted across the tiled floor in long yellow ribbons. Layla Johnson, wearing her faded blue uniform, knelt by the playroom floor with a mop and bucket beside her. Her hair was pulled back, loose strands sticking to her forehead with sweat. She had been up since 5 a.m., first to feed Naomi, then to drop her off in the small infant room before beginning her morning cleaning shift. She wiped at a sticky patch of spilled juice, pressing harder than necessary, as if the scrubbing itself could erase her exhaustion. From across the room, a little voice called, "Miss Layla, I dropped my crayon." Layla looked up to see a tiny girl with bright curls pointing at a purple crayon rolling under a shelf. Layla smiled, even though her eyes burned with fatigue. "I got it, sweetheart," she said softly, reaching under the shelf and handing it back. The girl grinned and skipped away, humming. Layla watched her go. Such lightness, such trust. She exhaled through her nose, pushing herself upright with a quiet groan. Her knees ached. The mop handle creaked. A dull throb pulsed behind her temples, the kind that came from too little sleep and too much worry. The daycare's director, a plump woman in her 50s named Mrs. Jennings, poked her head out from the office. Layla, once you're done in here, could you check the restroom? One of the toddlers had a bit of an accident, she said kindly but briskly. Of course, Layla answered, right after I finish this floor. Mrs. Jennings gave her a sympathetic look. You're a godsend, honey. Don't know what we'd do without you. Layla smiled faintly and nodded, but the words barely touched her. Compliments didn't pay bills and kindness didn't stretch sleep. From the window above the playroom she caught sight of a sleek black sedan pulling into the parking lot. The car's shine seemed almost out of place amid the worn minivans and hatchbacks. She didn't think much of it at first, until a tall man stepped out, his suit pressed, his stride deliberate, familiar. Marcus Vance. Her breath caught before she could hide it. What was he doing here? He spoke briefly with Mrs. Jennings at the entrance, handing her an envelope embossed with a gold emblem. Layla couldn't hear the words, only saw the polite professionalism in his gestures, the nod, the handshake. Mrs. Jennings' expression brightened, her smile growing wide and grateful. Layla realized with slow comprehension that he wasn't here as a parent, he was here as a donor. When Marcus turned slightly, sunlight caught the silver at his temples. He glanced into the playroom, just for a moment, and his eyes found Layla's. She froze, mop in hand, their gazes locked across the room like two people caught in the same memory. Then Marcus smiled, not the kind of smile meant to disarm, but one that carried recognition, apology, and something softer beneath it. Layla hesitated, then gave a small nod in return, cautious and polite. She forced herself to keep moving, to look busy, to keep her hands working, though her heart had stumbled. After a few minutes, Mrs. Jennings walked over, beaming. Layla, honey, you'll never guess who that was. Mr. Vance from Vance Industries. He's funding the new playground equipment we've been begging for. Layla blinked. Playground equipment. Yes, he came personally to deliver the first check. I tell you, it's a blessing. That old swing set's been dangerous for months. Mrs. Jennings patted her arm. Sometimes good people still surprise you. Layla managed a small strained smile. Yes, she said softly. Sometimes they do. The next morning, the children were gathered outside as workers unloaded bright metal swing sets and colorful slides from a truck. Marcus stood a few yards away, speaking with the project coordinator, sleeves rolled up, clipboard in hand. He looked strangely at ease, a man who usually signed contracts now holding a wrench. Layla was sweeping near the entrance when she noticed him walk toward the half-broken swing still standing in the corner of the yard. He knelt, testing the chain with his hand, then glanced around and saw her watching. Their eyes met again. This time, he smiled fully, a quiet, genuine thing that asked permission before crossing any line. She hesitated, then walked over. You're doing manual work now? She asked lightly, though her tone carried cautious curiosity. He shrugged, half smiling. Figured if I was going to fund it, I should know how it's put together. Layla nodded, folding her arms. I didn't expect to see you here. I didn't expect to be here either, Marcus said. But sometimes things lead where they need to. He looked at the rusted bolts and frowned slightly. When Mrs. Jennings mentioned the swing was broken, I thought about what that means to kids. Something so small, yet it's their world. Layla looked at the children nearby, Naomi toddling beside another little girl with pigtails, their laughter floating like bells. To them it is the world, she said. Marcus followed her gaze. His expression softened as he saw Naomi. She's feeling better, he asked quietly. Layla hesitated, then nodded. A little. She has good days and bad ones. He nodded too, not pressing further. She looks like she's got spirit. Reminds me of my daughter at that age. Layla blinked. You have a daughter? He smiled faintly. Lily, 8. She's the reason I still believe playgrounds matter. Before Layla could reply, Naomi tripped near the sandbox. Marcus instinctively stepped forward, but Layla was already there, scooping Naomi up, brushing dirt from her knees, whispering comfort. He watched her with something like reverence. The tenderness in her voice reminded him of the nights his late wife had sung to their child when fever blurred the lines between worry and faith. When Layla looked up again, she saw him still watching. She didn't look away this time. Over the following week, Marcus returned to the daycare twice, once to check on the progress, and again to drop off boxes of storybooks for the reading corner. Each time, he greeted Layla with quiet politeness. No grand gestures, no reminders of the grocery store. Just small conversations, about the weather, the children, the work being done. Little by little, the tension between them thinned. One evening, as Layla finished mopping the hallway, Marcus appeared again, this time without the suit jacket. Sleeves rolled to his elbows, tie loosened. He looked like someone who'd traded boardrooms for breathing space. "You're still here late," he said. Layla straightened, leaning on the mop handle. "Double shift," Mrs. Jennings asked if I could cover. "I can't really afford to say no." He nodded, studying her face. The fatigue there wasn't subtle. Her eyes carried shadows, not from makeup, but from life. "You work nights too, don't you?" he asked softly. She gave a small, almost embarrassed laugh. "At the nursing home, yes, part-time. They need the help, and I need the hours." Marcus hesitated. "You're doing 3 jobs, Layla." "Sometimes surviving is the job," she said simply. That silence between them stretched, filled with mutual understanding, his of loss, hers of endurance. Then Layla's phone buzzed. She looked down, her face paling as she read the message. Her hand trembled slightly. "Excuse me," she murmured, stepping aside to read it fully. Marcus saw her expression change, from concern to quiet dread. When she ended the call, she just stood there, her knuckles white around the phone. "Naomi's doctor," she said softly. "They got the test results back." Her voice faltered, barely above a whisper. "It's a genetic condition, the kind that needs surgery." Marcus didn't speak right away. He knew the name of that kind of fear, the way it hollowed out sound. "Is she going to be all right?" he asked gently. Layla swallowed hard. "She will be if I can find $50,000. Her eyes glistened, but she refused to cry. "There's a treatment program through Clearwater Medical. They said, there's a chance, I just have to raise it somehow." Marcus's heart clenched. Clearwater. That name hit him like a stone, the same foundation he had funded years ago in memory of Elizabeth, his late wife, who had died of a nearly identical condition. He had poured money into that research to spare someone else what he couldn't fix, and now, that someone stood before him. He wanted to speak, to say, "Let me handle it," but he saw the wall of her pride, built from every insult, every refusal, every night she had gone without. If he pushed too soon, he would lose her trust entirely. So he said only, "If there's a fundraiser, send me the link." She hesitated, wary. "It's just a small online page, a friend set it up. I don't expect much." Still, Marcus said, his tone even, respectful. "Send it, please." That night, after Naomi fell asleep, Layla opened her laptop and copied the fundraiser link into an email. She hovered over the send button for a long time, thinking of how easily generosity could turn into pity. But something in Marcus's eyes that afternoon, the quiet sincerity, the restraint, made her believe he meant what he said. She clicked send. Across town, in a glass-walled office overlooking the city skyline, Marcus read her email long after business hours. He stared at the small photo on the fundraiser page, Naomi smiling faintly, a hospital wristband on her arm. The goal read $50,000. The total raised $486. His throat tightened. He remembered the same numbers years ago, the same desperation. He also remembered the helplessness of watching someone fade because help came too late. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. Then he called his financial advisor. "Clearwater Medical Foundation," he said. "Make an anonymous contribution to this campaign. $49,000, immediately." 2 days later, Layla opened her phone during a break and gasped aloud. The number on the fundraiser had jumped overnight, from hundreds to nearly 50,000. Her heart pounded. She scrolled through the donor list, but the largest contribution read only, "Anonymous." For a moment joy flooded her, then confusion, then suspicion. She checked the notifications again. Her inbox was full of automated alerts and verification requests. A banner message appeared, "Account temporarily frozen for verification of unusual activity." Her stomach dropped. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The site's automated system had flagged the donation as potential fraud. Every dollar, including the smaller ones, was now locked. She called customer service explaining, pleading, but they repeated the same script. "We're sorry, ma'am, it's under review. It may take up to 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Naomi didn't have 2 weeks. Her hands shook as she ended the call. Rage, humiliation and panic all tangled into one unbearable knot. Whoever this anonymous donor was, their attempt to help had just ruined everything. And in the corner of her mind, she already knew who it was. The next morning, Layla stormed through the glass doors of Vance Industries. She had never set foot in a place like this. Marble floors, quiet elevators, the scent of money in the air. A receptionist started to greet her, but Layla's voice cut through, calm but sharp. "I need to see Marcus Vance. Do you have an appointment?" "No," she said. "Tell him Layla Johnson is here. He'll understand." Something in her tone made the receptionist hesitate, then pick up the phone. Minutes later, Marcus appeared from the corridor, his face shifting from surprise to concern when he saw her. "Layla," he said softly. "What did you do?" she demanded. Her voice trembled, but not from fear, from fury. "You think you can just buy your way into people's lives? You sent that money, didn't you?" Marcus looked around. Employees paused. Curious, he gestured gently toward his office. "Please, come inside. Let's talk privately." She followed, though every muscle in her body screamed to leave. His office was modern, minimalist, all glass, gray steel, and quiet hum. Layla stood by the window, her hands balled at her sides. "You had no right," she said. "Now the account's frozen. They think it's fraud. The hospital can't schedule her surgery. You made it worse." Marcus closed the door and turned toward her, eyes steady but filled with regret. "I'm sorry, I was trying to help without embarrassing you." "Well, congratulations," she said bitterly. "Mission failed." Her words landed hard. He took them. "You're right," he said, after a moment. "I should have told you, I didn't because." He stopped, searching for the truth that fit inside a single breath. "Because I've been where you are." Layla frowned, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" He looked past her, out the glass window where the city stretched endless and uncaring. "My wife Elizabeth, she died 4 years ago. Same diagnosis, same hospital, same fundraiser." His voice cracked slightly, raw even after years of practiced calm. "We raised 48,000, we needed 50. The insurance delayed. By the time the approval came, she was gone." Silence filled the office like thick air. Layla's anger softened, not gone, but unsteady now. She saw the grief behind his eyes, a wound too deep for money to heal. He met her gaze again. "When I saw Naomi's photo, I couldn't stand by. I thought maybe I could make it right this time. For someone." Her throat tightened. "You can't fix grief by throwing money at strangers." "I know," he said quietly. "But sometimes money is the only language the world listens to." Layla turned away, crossing her arms, staring at the skyline. The glass reflected her weary face back at her, and his standing behind her. Two people bound by loss, pride and a strange, unwanted gratitude. After a long pause, she said softly, "If you want to help, then treat it like business. Make it a loan, a legal one, with terms, signatures, everything. I'll pay you back." Marcus blinked, then nodded slowly. "If that's what it takes for you to feel safe, yes." "It's not about feeling safe," she said. "It's about dignity." He smiled faintly. "Then let's do it your way." She met his eyes, truly met them, and for the first time, there was no tension between them, just understanding. Marcus sat down at his desk, opened a drawer and pulled out a simple contract template. "We'll make it official," he said. "No charity, no pity, just partnership." Layla's voice softened. "Thank you for listening." He looked at her, and something unspoken passed between them. Not romantic, but deeply human. A quiet alignment of two broken halves learning, for the first time, to trust again. As she left the office, the city outside glowed in late afternoon light, a soft, forgiving gold that blurred the sharp edges of the glass buildings. She looked up, breathing deeply, the weight in her chest just a little lighter. Somewhere behind her, Marcus watched through the window as she crossed the street, pushing open the door to the waiting bus. He didn't follow, he didn't need to. He finally understood that sometimes the greatest kindness wasn't rescue, it was respect, and for the first time in years, he felt his heart begin to heal. Spring slid into early summer with the kind of warmth that made the air shimmer above the asphalt. The city wore the season lazily, open windows, bright awnings, the sound of lawn sprinklers and children chasing ice cream trucks. But for Layla, the days had become a blur of work, paperwork, and hospital visits. Inside the small apartment, morning light fell through thin curtains, catching dust motes that hung like tiny suspended stars. Naomi sat on the couch in her pajamas, coloring in a notebook with uneven crayon strokes. Her cheeks were paler now, her energy fragile. Yet when she laughed, the sound still had that bell-like clarity that made the walls feel wider. Layla stood at the counter, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, I've sent the documents," she said softly, tucking a stray braid behind her ear. The hospital confirmed the new transfer. "Yes, under the name Vance Medical Loan Agreement, that's correct." A pause, then relief crossed her face. "Thank you." She hung up and leaned on the counter for a moment, letting out a shaky breath. "Mommy?" Naomi asked, looking up from her drawing. Layla smiled faintly. "Everything's okay, sweetheart. The nice doctor says we can start the treatment soon." Naomi nodded and went back to coloring. Her little hand gripped the crayon tightly. On the page, she had drawn two stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands under a smiling sun. Layla's throat tightened when she saw it. That afternoon, Marcus came by to deliver a copy of the final agreement. He didn't wear a suit today, just a gray sweater and jeans, sleeves pushed up, the faint smell of aftershave and printer ink clinging to him. Layla let him in reluctantly, though not coldly. Their relationship now lived in a delicate middle ground, between gratitude and guardedness. Naomi's face lit up when she saw him. "Hi, Mr. Marcus," she said brightly, running to show him her drawing. Marcus crouched down to her height. "That's beautiful," he said. "Is that you and your mom?" Naomi giggled. "That's you," she said, pointing to the taller figure. "You fixed the swings." Marcus's eyes softened. "Then I'll make sure they never break again." Layla looked on, arms folded but smiling despite herself. Watching Naomi's ease with him made something inside her unclench, a reminder that trust didn't always come from logic. Sometimes it came from kindness, repeated quietly. Over the next few weeks, their contact grew more frequent. Marcus handled the logistics, medical bills, transportation, loan schedules, but always through professional boundaries. Layla worked, cared for Naomi, and tried to rebuild her stability. They would meet at the daycare or the hospital lobby, exchanging brief words, nods, half smiles that carried unspoken understanding. But peace, like glass, is fragile. One afternoon, as Layla was leaving the daycare, a photographer crouched by the gate snapped a photo, the click sharp, invasive. She blinked, startled. Another flash followed. "Ma'am, how long have you known Mr. Vance?" someone called. "Is he paying for your daughter's treatment?" Layla froze. "What? Who are you?" But the man was already retreating, camera still clicking. By the next morning, the world had turned on her. Vance Industries CEO's secret charity case revealed, the headline screamed from a tabloid site. Below it, a grainy photo of Layla holding Naomi outside the daycare, Marcus's car, visible in the background. The caption, "Single mother receives mysterious loan from widowed billionaire." Layla's hands trembled as she scrolled. The article dripped with insinuation, calling her a struggling beauty, and hinting that sources close to Vance questioned his motives. The comments below were worse. Her phone buzzed endlessly, unknown numbers, private messages, reporters. At the daycare, Mrs. Jennings pulled her aside, face grave. "I'm so sorry, Layla," she whispered. "The board wants to suspend you until this blows over. They say it's about reputation." "Reputation," Layla repeated, voice breaking. "I did nothing wrong." Mrs. Jennings squeezed her hand helplessly. "I know, but people love gossip more than truth." By evening, Layla had lost her job. 2 days later, her landlord slid an envelope under her door, a rent increase, double. And then came the letter from Child Protective Services, an anonymous report questioning her financial situation and her child's health. Each word was another stone pressing on her chest. That night, Marcus found her sitting on the steps outside her apartment, phone in hand, tears she hadn't meant to shed streaking her face. He'd read the same articles, seen the same poison. "Layla," he said quietly, stepping closer. "Don't," she said, voice shaking. "Don't say it's going to be okay. You don't know that." "I'll fix this," he said, but she laughed, a hollow sound. You can't fix people's cruelty with money, Marcus. You just make it louder. He looked at her, jaw tight. Do you know who started it? She didn't answer, but he already suspected. The next morning, Marcus walked into his office and summoned his assistant. Get me everything related to Victoria Lane, he said. Victoria, his ex-fiancée, socialite, sharp as glass, and twice as cold. She had once loved his fortune more than his grief. When he ended things quietly months ago, she had taken it as betrayal. Now the gossip columns carried her fingerprints. The investigation confirmed it. Leaked documents, private tips, calls to the daycare board. Victoria's name behind every whisper. Marcus's fury was not loud, it was surgical. That afternoon, he confronted her at her art gallery, a white, sterile space filled with sculptures that looked like frozen screams. Marcus, she said, smiling too sweetly, I heard about your little charity project. He didn't return the smile. You've gone too far, Victoria. Oh, come on, she said, swirling wine in a crystal glass. You're a public figure. People talk. Maybe next time don't play savior with women half your net worth. His voice dropped, dangerous in its calm. Her daughter is sick. You turned that into entertainment. Victoria's smirk wavered. It's not my fault the world loves a story. No, Marcus said, but it's your fault they had one to tell. He laid a folder on her table, copies of her emails to reporters, anonymous account transfers. Her face drained of color. You think you can scare me, she spat. No, he said evenly. I'm done with fear, but you'll answer for what you did. He left her standing there, trembling, glass shards of her composure glittering on the floor. Meanwhile, Naomi's condition worsened. The doctors called it complications. Layla called it time slipping away. She sat by the hospital bed, holding Naomi's hand as machines beeped softly. The little girl looked too small against the white sheets, her breathing shallow. Layla brushed sweat from her forehead and whispered, Mommy's here, always here. A nurse entered quietly. The additional surgery costs $75,000, she said gently. Insurance won't cover the new procedure. Layla nodded numbly. Thank you. That night, she sold the last thing she owned of value, her wedding ring. A small gold band, scuffed and simple, engraved inside with M+L. Michael, her late husband, gone before Naomi turned 1. The pawnbroker gave her $320. It wasn't enough. The next morning, her photo appeared online again. Single mother pawns wedding ring, desperate after scandal. Layla stared at the headline, until the letters blurred. Then she turned off the screen, folded her hands, and whispered, please no more. Later that day, Marcus arrived at the hospital, his tie gone, his face drawn tight, with anger and exhaustion. I took care of it, he said. Victoria's done. The press will retract the stories. But Layla interrupted, her voice breaking. None of that matters. Naomi needs surgery now. He nodded. Then let me help. Layla hesitated, pride rising one last time, like an old reflex. Then she looked at her daughter's fragile chest, rising and falling under the thin blanket. She picked up her phone and called him before the hesitation could grow roots. Marcus, she said quietly, please, help her. His answer was immediate, always. Within hours, he moved mountains. Calls to Clearwater Medical, board approvals, private funding. By dawn, the paperwork was signed, and the surgery scheduled. Layla stood outside the operating room, gown tied, mask hanging loose around her neck. Marcus stood beside her, not touching her, just near enough that she could feel his steadiness, like a hand at her back. She's in the best hands, he said quietly. Layla nodded, tears finally falling. I don't even know how to thank you. You already did, he said. You trusted me. They watched as the doors closed, sealing Naomi inside that sterile room full of miracles and risk. Hours passed like days. The hallway clock's hands crawled. Marcus brought coffee she didn't drink. Layla prayed in silence, the words looping without sound. Then at last, the surgeon emerged, mask down, eyes tired but smiling. She made it, he said simply. The operation was successful. Layla's knees nearly gave out. She covered her mouth with both hands, sobbing. The kind of tears that come from somewhere, ancient inside the heart. Marcus caught her by the shoulders, steadying her. He didn't speak, he just let her cry. When she finally looked up, her eyes red and shining, she whispered, "You saved her." Marcus shook his head. "You did. You never stopped fighting." A week later, Naomi sat up in bed, color back in her cheeks, a bandage on her tiny wrist. She was drawing again, 2 stick figures, this time 3, a man, a woman, and a child, holding hands beneath a banner that said, "Thank you." Layla smiled through tears as she taped the drawing to the hospital wall. Marcus watched quietly from the doorway, hands in his pockets, a rare peace in his eyes. "I'm starting something," he said softly, "a foundation, the Naomi and Lily Foundation, to help single parents cover medical costs. You'll run community outreach, if you'll accept." Layla turned to him, speechless. "Me?" He nodded. "Who better? You know what it means to fight with nothing but love." She pressed a hand to her heart. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said smiling. "The world needs your kind of courage." The news broke weeks later, not scandal this time but redemption. Naomi and Lily Foundation launches with $50 million endowment, inspired by a single mother's strength. At the gala, under soft golden lights, Marcus took the stage. Cameras flashed, but this time the story was theirs to tell. He spoke briefly. "There are people who remind us that dignity and compassion are not opposites," he said, his voice steady. "One of them is here tonight, Layla Johnson. She taught me that kindness isn't charity, it's partnership." Applause filled the hall, not for the millionaire but for the woman in the simple navy dress standing beside him, hands clasped, eyes glistening. Layla didn't wave, she just bowed her head slightly, humble as ever. Naomi, sitting on Mrs. Jennings's lap near the front, clapped with small, eager hands. As the applause faded, Marcus leaned toward Layla and said quietly, "You changed how I understand helping." Layla turned to him, smiling through tears. "And you changed how I understand being helped." Later that night, when the crowd was gone and the hall stood empty, Layla walked alone across the quiet stage. The spotlights were off now, only a faint glow from the chandeliers. She looked up and saw her reflection in the dark glass of the windows, a woman still standing, still proud, still whole. Marcus joined her, jacket slung over his shoulder. For a moment they simply stood side by side, the silence gentle. "You know," he said, "Elizabeth used to say that kindness doesn't ask for permission, it just shows up." Layla smiled faintly. "And you showed up, even when I didn't want you to." He chuckled softly. "You taught me patience, and you taught me that accepting help isn't weakness," she said, "it's faith." They shared a quiet look, not romantic, not unfinished, but deeply human. Beyond the tall windows, the city lights shimmered like constellations. For the first time in years, Marcus felt peace that didn't hurt, and Layla felt gratitude that didn't shame her. The echoes of applause were gone now, but the kindness remained. Quieter, stronger, built not from grand gestures but from choices made when no one was watching. The morning the doctors finally cleared Naomi to go home, the hospital smelled of disinfectant and sunlight. Pale curtains rippled near the windows where spring wind wandered in, carrying the faint scent of new rain. Naomi, dressed in a soft yellow sweater, clutched her stuffed bunny close as she sat on the edge of the bed swinging her legs. Layla was helping her lace her tiny shoes when the nurse came in smiling. "Big day," she said cheerfully. "You ready to go home, Miss Naomi?" Naomi nodded solemnly. "Mommy said I get pancakes." The nurse laughed. "Then you better hurry, or they'll get cold." Layla thanked her and packed the last of the small bag, coloring books, a half-empty bottle of hand sanitizer, and the get well cards taped to the wall. One was from Lily, Marcus's daughter. The drawing showed 2 stick girls holding hands, both smiling under a sky full of blue crayon clouds. At the bottom, in careful handwriting, it said, "For Naomi, my brave friend." Layla folded the card gently and slipped it into her purse. When Marcus arrived, carrying a bouquet of daisies and a box of bakery muffins, Naomi lit up. "Mr. Marcus," she squealed. "I'm going home." He smiled. "And the hospital will miss its sunshine." Naomi giggled and pressed the flowers to her face. "They smell like morning," she said, and Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, the kind of joy that isn't loud, just pure. The drive home was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. Marcus drove while Layla sat beside him, Naomi asleep in her car seat behind them. The city rolled by in flashes of light and motion, shop windows, buses, kids with backpacks. Layla leaned her head against the window, the rhythm of the road soothing. After a while, she said softly, "I still can't believe she's really okay." Marcus glanced at her. "She is. And you made sure of it." Layla smiled faintly. "We both did." They drove the rest of the way in companionable silence. When Marcus pulled up in front of her building, Layla turned to him. "Would you like to come up? Naomi's been talking about showing you her picture wall." He hesitated just a second, then nodded. "I'd like that." Upstairs, the apartment looked brighter than before. Same peeling paint, same creaking floor, but somehow different. Hope has a way of changing the color of everything. The pail under the ceiling was gone, the leak fixed by the building maintenance crew Marcus had quietly arranged without telling her. Naomi took Marcus's hand and tugged him toward her little corner of the living room. "See," she said proudly, pointing to the collage of drawings taped across the wall. "That's Mommy, that's me, that's you and Lily on the swings." Marcus crouched to study the artwork, smiling. "You're quite an artist," he said. "Do you draw every day?" "Almost," Naomi said seriously. "When I grow up, I'm going to paint people who help other people." Layla met Marcus's eyes. There was no need to speak. Naomi's words had said enough. That week, letters began arriving. Some from strangers, parents of sick children, thanking the Naomi and Lily Foundation for helping them. Others from hospitals across the state requesting partnership. The foundation grew faster than either of them expected. Marcus insisted that Layla take the role of community director, complete with a real office at the downtown branch. At first she laughed it off. "I'm no executive," she'd said, but he reminded her that compassion was the rarest qualification of all. Each morning she rode the bus downtown, still using her old canvas tote, still saying hello to the same driver, and each evening she came home to Naomi's laughter and the hum of a small life rebuilt. One quiet Friday, Layla stopped by Marcus's office with new documents to sign. His assistant let her in. Marcus was standing by the window, a letter in his hand. He looked different, lighter, somehow, as if something long held inside had finally released. "Everything okay?" she asked. He turned and handed her the letter. "You should read this." It was from the Veterans Family Relief Fund, addressed to her late husband, Michael Johnson. Inside, the note thanked Mr. Marcus Vance for a $5,000 anonymous contribution made 5 years ago to support families of fallen soldiers, including hers. Layla's breath caught. "You, that was you." He nodded gently. "Back then I was still lost, my wife had just passed, and I donated to several programs connected to military families. I didn't know who the recipients were." He paused. "Until now." She sank slowly into the chair across from him, the paper trembling in her hands. "You helped us before you even knew us. Maybe some things are meant to cross paths more than once," he said quietly. For a long time neither spoke. Outside, the afternoon light glowed soft and amber. It felt like standing in a circle of things coming full. A few weeks later, Marcus invited her and Naomi to tour the new pediatric wing being funded by the foundation. As they walked the white hallways, the chief surgeon mentioned something casually that made Layla stop in her tracks. "The new gene therapy used in Naomi's case," he said, "was developed from the same research data we received from the Vance Endowment Fund years ago. Without that, we wouldn't have had the trial ready." Layla turned to Marcus in disbelief. He met her eyes, quiet, humble. "That was Elizabeth's project," he said. "She wanted to make sure her illness led to healing for someone else. Looks like it finally did." Layla felt her throat tighten. "So your wife helped save my daughter." He nodded slowly. "In a way, yes." Tears welled in her eyes, not the sharp kind of grief, but the warm kind that carries gratitude. "Then this was never just coincidence," she whispered. "No," he said. "It was connection." Victoria Lane's downfall arrived like a slow-moving storm. The police reports, the financial audits, the quiet testimonies, all found her guilty of embezzlement and harassment. She was sentenced quietly, without spectacle. Marcus never gloated, he simply moved on. Some battles he'd learned, end not with triumph but with peace. When Layla heard, she only sighed softly. "I don't hate her," she said. "I just hope she finds something better to do with her pain." Marcus nodded. "That's more mercy than most people would give." "Mercy's cheaper than anger," Layla said. "And it lasts longer." 2 months later, Marcus stopped by Layla's apartment one evening. He looked almost shy, holding a small velvet box. Naomi was already asleep, the apartment dim, except for the lamp near the couch. "I have something for you," he said. Layla raised an eyebrow. "Marcus, if this is another donation." "It's not," he said quickly. "It's something that belongs to you." He handed her the box. Inside, nestled in blue velvet, was her wedding ring. Her breath caught. "How did you?" "I found it at the pawn shop," he said quietly. "Recognized the engraving. I thought it should come home." Layla stared at the simple band gleaming under the lamplight. The little scratches were still there, but the gold had been polished to a soft glow. She ran her thumb over the letters M+L and felt her eyes sting. "I couldn't replace it," Marcus said. "I just wanted you to have it back." She looked up at him, tears gathering but her smile steady. "It's more than I deserve." "No," he said gently. "It's exactly what you deserve. Your story, made whole again." The following autumn, the foundation held its first annual charity event in the city park. Families gathered under strings of warm lights, children painted faces, chased balloons, and laughed until the stars appeared. A stage stood near the playground where new equipment gleamed, the same swings Marcus had once repaired himself. Layla stepped up to the microphone as applause settled into quiet. She wore a simple cream dress, her hair loose around her shoulders, a calm glow about her. Marcus and Lily stood in the front row, Naomi perched on Marcus's shoulders, waving proudly. Layla's voice carried steady across the evening air. "When I first met Marcus Vance," she began, "I was too proud to accept help. I thought kindness meant weakness, but life has a way of teaching us that helping and being helped are both acts of courage." She looked toward Marcus. "Dignity doesn't come from standing alone, it comes from standing together." The crowd rose in applause, the sound rolled through the park like a wave of light. At the edge of the playground, a bronze plaque was unveiled beneath the swings. It read, "In honor of where kindness began, Morrison's Grocery, Register 7. Beneath it, smaller letters, "Dignity is the language of the heart." Tears filled Layla's eyes as she traced the engraving with her fingers. Marcus stood beside her, quiet. Neither spoke, they didn't need to. Weeks later, Layla sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, sorting through thank you letters for the foundation. Outside, leaves rustled against the window. Naomi sat on the floor, drawing again, this time a picture of the park plaque, with herself, Lily and their parents laughing nearby. There was a knock at the door. Layla opened it to find Mara, the grocery store cashier from that long ago night, standing there awkwardly, holding a small brown envelope. "Miss Johnson," Mara said nervously. "I wasn't sure if you'd remember me, from Morrison's." Layla blinked, surprised, then smiled gently. "Of course I remember." Mara's eyes brimmed with guilt. "I've thought about that night for years, the way I acted, the way people whispered. I was young and stupid, and..." Layla reached out, touching her arm lightly. "You don't owe me an apology," she said softly. "That night taught both of us something." Mara's voice trembled. "Still, I'm sorry." Layla smiled. "Apology accepted." Mara exhaled in relief and handed her the envelope. Inside was a small handwritten note, "To the woman who taught me what grace looks like." When Layla closed the door, she stood for a long moment just breathing, the note pressed against her chest. That evening, she and Naomi took a walk to Morrison's Grocery. The store looked the same old hum of lights, same smell of produce and coffee. But now, by Register 7, a small framed photograph hung near the counter. It showed the new playground ribbon cutting, Marcus and Layla standing side by side. Underneath was a single caption, where a simple note began a story of kindness. Layla smiled, remembering the girl she'd been that night, tired, humiliated, too proud to accept $3. She reached out and straightened the photo slightly, her reflection mingling with it in the glass. "Come on, Mommy," Naomi said, tugging her hand. "Let's get milk for pancakes." Layla laughed softly. "All right, sweetheart." They walked out into the fading evening light. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain and cut grass. Across town, a church bell chimed 6 times. Layla looked up at the sky, the same color as the first night everything began, and smiled. Somewhere, kindness had started again, quietly, simply, the way it always does.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons.
Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.